Hi, I'm Tyler Simone, and this is the Happily Self-Conscious podcast, the show where it's cool to be self-conscious. As a personal development enthusiast, I love to learn how I can become better in all areas of life, and I want to share with you transformative tips and tricks to help you also become your best self. Together, we'll learn how we can become more self-conscious. Let's do it. Welcome to episode number 21. I'm so happy to be here. But before I really get into anything, I just want to say, with all that's going on in the world right now, I'm sending you love and I'm sending you strength, and I'm hoping that you find peace soon. I'm hoping that we all find peace soon. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about peace and how you don't know how important it is until it's gone. Or sometimes you'll slowly become more peaceful, and then out of nowhere, you'll realize that you haven't been at peace for a while, for who knows how long. Peace is super expensive. It's very expensive, and there's just nothing like it. And that is an interesting segue, but it works. Here we go. Let's get into today's topic. I have been pushing this topic back for a few weeks because it's enormous. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to say, but then I thought, you know what? That's the ego. That's the ego trying to keep me stuck. I need to just follow my heart and do it, just put it out there, because I've had this topic on my mind for a while now. So, the ego, sneaky. It is your number one enemy because it will hold you back from everything you desire. And sometimes you won't even know it if you're not aware that it's taking over, which is crazy. The ego is something that we all have. It's that voice in your head that starts speaking when you're trying something or someone new. It's the voice that tells you that you're good right where you are. It's the voice that convinces you that you don't need to apologize because it's full of pride. We all have an ego, and you can't silence it forever, but you can learn what it sounds like and how to ignore it. And why should you ignore it? Well, it's coming from a very fearful place. It's trying to keep you safe, and sometimes it's correct. You are in a dangerous environment and you should get out. But the thing is that it reacts the same way when you go against the grain and try to become more in any way, shape, or form. It wants comfortability, and it doesn't like change at all. It'll have you fixed on the worst case scenarios. It tells you should be on guard because it's you against them. Everyone else is a threat of some kind. It will keep you in a box if you let it. It's getting control over it that is the key. The opposite of living from the ego is to live from your soul or your spirit instead. That is the deepest part of you, and that can be kind of tough. It requires a pretty big perspective shift, and it's so necessary because the ego will keep you living a life that you don't love. It'll keep you doing jobs you don't like, in a relationship you're not happy in, and you'll hold on to old stories about yourself or the world around you, which have no basis in what is actually happening. One thing I really love is a new journal. There's nothing like cracking open a brand new one to start writing down the goals you have for yourself. Love It Planners has super cute journals, vision board kits, planners, and printables that were created just for you to give you the motivation you need to make your dreams a reality. I write in my manifestation journal every morning to keep my goals in mind. It's helped keep me on track and to ignite more motivation in me to make those goals happen for myself. You can click my link down below in the show notes to receive 15% off your order today. Start making your goals your reality with Love It Planners. Now, back to the show. The difference between living from a place of ego and the opposite, which is living from a place of love or listening to your intuition and going with the flow, is that when the ego is in control, there is no peace. It's just a constant fight, but it's all internal, although once you know what it looks like, you can spot it. When I was younger, I was under the impression that the ego was just something really entitled people had. Based off of what I could see and how I pieced things together, that's what I thought, but it's so much more than that. I've been reading Trust Your Vibes by Sonia Choquette, and it's all about intuitive intelligence. If we're talking intuitive intelligence, we're talking about ego because they are rivals. She says the ego's primary stance is me against you. So life is reduced to battling to be right. So in that case, it can damage you socially and personally because it will distort your reality, intentionally trying to confirm everything you already think. And those thoughts are based on what you've learned in your life and what you've experienced, etc. So they're not always true. And your ego is trying to protect you. And it is necessary, but it can also hold you back. The ego is fear-based. When fear is present, just know that is the ego taking over, and it's possible to get lost in it all. In the ego, sometimes we are acting out of our ego and we don't even know it, but as soon as we become more grounded in who we are and silence the ego, we can actually live the life we're supposed to live personally and professionally. I'm starting to realize that personal development and spirituality are one and the same. You have to tap into your spirit in order to truly grow and move forward in your personal development journey. Tapping into your spirit is how you overcome the ego. There's no more inner conflict and you just go with the flow, which is impossible when living from the ego. It tries to control the world around you and is trying to stay safe. You know, it's a survival thing. Oh, and it worries. It worries a lot. And worry is a result of fear. It tries to confirm your beliefs, and these beliefs, they're not the good kind. They're the self-limiting thoughts, the self-doubt. It's very critical, judgmental, those kinds of thoughts and beliefs. It also believes that you need external things, different materials, people, money in order to feel whole or to feel okay, which leads you to constantly look for more validation, more control, for a boost of self-esteem from somewhere, somehow, and the ego expects the worst. Whatever that absolute worst case scenario is, that's what the ego worries about. It's always waiting for something to happen, and it's just never at peace. It doesn't have any trust, which is not good because you can self-sabotage things you perceive as a threat, but we're never one to begin with. Emotions can be distorted by the ego, causing you to see things that aren't there, that aren't actually happening. It's the perspective of the ego that can turn everything upside down. Going against your ego can be hard sometimes because it is scary. Whatever you're trying to do is new and your ego is trying to protect you by telling you that you can't do it. Who do you think you are? You're not ready yet. Anything that could possibly keep you comfortable right where you are. And if you choose to lean into it, you're unable to live a fulfilling life. In order to live a fulfilling life, you have to choose to go after your dreams. You have to choose to love. You have to choose to be happy. And sometimes those choices, they're pretty big. They're big choices. They can go against everything you've ever known, but you have to choose to do it anyway because it feels right. And going towards what feels right is the key. In Trusting Your Vibes, she talks a lot about ego, which I really appreciated because it's just such a complex topic. And it's nice to know how it interrupts what your best self wants to do. The book is all about living an intuitive life. And when your ego is in control, you can't truly live an intuitive life. You should definitely read the book. It's really good, especially if you really enjoy spirituality. It might actually be my favorite book of 2023, which is a pretty big deal. It's really good. But back to the ego. It shuts down your intuition. And instead of living life from a state of flow, you're living life from a state of fear. And that voice becomes so loud that you can't hear your intuition anymore. There was something that really clicked for me while reading the book. Sonia was explaining how her ego didn't want to allow her to get a divorce from her husband despite the relationship issues. Her ego was basically telling her that she's not a quitter, so she should therefore stay in the situation. It didn't want to allow that change, even though the change was for her highest good and well-being. She says that her spirit was unhappy for a long time, and I think that's an important note. And that's the thing. Your spirit always knows, but your ego will keep you stuck. So eventually, she chose to follow her intuition, her spirit, instead of her ego. And as a result, her ego was crushed, but her spirit was fulfilled and was not going back. Her life became more beautiful and more exciting. So, moral of the story, your ego is trying to keep you stagnant. And your intuition or your spirit is trying to show you the way. It's more love-based, more truthful, more free, going after more joy at all times. What you want to do is train your mind to listen to your spirit, not your ego. Because the ego will always be there, and it helps to know its voice when it shows up, and then you can choose not to listen to it. And it does take some practice, and honestly, the practice just never ends. It's a choice that you make all day, every day. From which place inside of you are you going to react? Bypassing the ego hurts sometimes. It causes this temporary pain, and that is why we choose not to disobey it and to agree with it. Everything it's saying about us, everything it says about other people and the world. And this is all happening whether we know it or not. But acting out of ego doesn't typically end well if the reactions are out of place. There is this quote in Simple Abundance that says, "Your authentic self is your ego's worst nightmare." And that is so true. Every time you inch closer to your authentic self, there it is again. But it's okay because now we know what it is and we can detect it more often. The quote for today's episode is from a book called Everything is Here to Help You by Matt Kahn. As we learn to become familiar with recurring patterns of ego, without judging it or buying into its beliefs and demands, the grip of inner conflict begins to loosen. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The ego is such a big topic of discussion, and there's so much more to discuss, but I'll save that for later. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to click the follow button so you don't miss future episodes. And if you see another one on the list that you think looks interesting, take a listen or just download it for later. I'll see you next time.